Tim.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here. It's Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, 2015. And guess what? An old friend who I actually never met has come to our studio, and we're going to catch up. Now, if you have been watching ThinkTech religiously, you would know that back in, last year, I guess it was.
No, this year.
This year.
Early this year, yeah.
Avrum Goodblatt was here.
Well, virtually.
He was here by Skype.
That's right.
And he was in Philadelphia at the time, and he was a techie, a really big techie, an enterprise level techie, and he decided to come to Hawaii and sort of see the lay of the land. So it starts with the fact that we had him doing shows from Philadelphia, talking to his friends on, I guess, the East Coast, east of the Great Divide.
Right.
and sort of giving us a handle on what it's like to be in that community, the community of enterprise software people. And now he followed through on what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to come to Maui, live in Maui, and find what was going on in Maui. Welcome to the show, finally, Avrum.
Thank you. Thank you for your hospitality. I enjoyed all those shows. I'm hoping to maybe do a few more again. Maui has been great, as it always was. I used to live on Maui before I moved to Philadelphia, and now I'm back home, I like to say. As you know, my interests relate to how to improve software development, especially in the sciences, by building bridges of communication between the people who make the software, and software engineers, and the people who are going to be using it. For example, the scientists that I would work with.
Mm-hmm.
And my goal was at the time to get scientists to own the process of designing their software.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that in a minute, but first I want to do history. What were you doing in Philadelphia? It's a city of brotherly love, by the way.
Well, I was working for many years with the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine in developing software management tools for scientists' research, scientific research. Then I was working for a company called Stratacore, which
I remember that.
Which provides software for biomedical research systems for core facilities around the world. So for them, I was supporting their clients in Europe, Australia, the United States, electronically. I've also worked for some other institutions, but those are the main things to know about.
So when you work for companies like this doing, let's call it medical scientific software, what do you use? Apple Basic?
It could be. You know what? Even Apple Basic would be useful if it was designed well. Now, I don't mean that Basic is, I meant if the program itself has a purpose and a well thought out design, then no matter what the language is, you'll get some value out of it.
But you probably make some choices along the way as to get famous.
That's not really
what
we use.
It was not Apple Basic,
no,
I feel
not
certain.
Apple Basic, no. A lot of the work is done these days in Java. I don't work in Java myself, but more popular are things like what they call LAMP, which is a combination of using Linux, Apache servers, MySQL as the database, and PHP as the language.
Those are all open source things, aren't they?
That's correct. It's an open source platform, but that's only one of several. There are other languages you could use instead of PHP. Python is very popular, for example, and which give you a lot of control, but also can be prototyped very quickly, which is important in providing software to scientists.
Yeah, you got to get up and running. But,
and they change what they want.
And
they change what they want.
Well, that's the nature of people. I mean, it's and so this is the basic tension you've set up.
Right.
The guy who wants the software and the guy who's going to provide it to him, and we got to get it so that the twain will meet.
Well, there are special problems with scientists because, after all, to be a good scientist, you should be creating new science, not doing the old stuff. You get paid to develop new concepts, new ideas, new theories. So you're always trying to do something new.
But they're smart guys. They can open a book just like you, and they can learn about Python or whatever, just like you.
That's right.
They know exactly what they want. Why can't they do their own programming? In fact, at UH, a lot of them do their own programming.
Yes. It's a very important but subtle question. Yes, they can in theory. However, It depends on the nature of the scientist and the discipline. Some are more capable of doing it than others because of the nature. If you're
The nature of the science.
Yes.
Give me an example of that.
If you're a physicist,
Yeah.
and I'm making a gross generalization, and my biologist
You're
friends might get mad at me,
profiling.
I'm profiling. Physicists generally, a lot of them have the ability to do it, but there's still a problem there, which I'll explain in a second. But I worked a lot in biomedical research, and a lot of the scientists who grew up with biology as their main discipline don't necessarily have the same computing skills or the interest. And part of the issue is, if you're a young researcher at 30, you maybe can do everything because you grew up with computers, but you do not control the budget. That's controlled by people our age.
Who don't really, I mean, generally, present company excluded,
Yes.
but generally don't really appreciate the value of spending $1 on software.
Depending on which thing. It's very easy to explain this and get astrophysicists to agree. It's harder to get marine biologists to agree. There's a continuum of interest and involvement.
So what are the elements we're looking for? I mean, this is a really
Well, but
interesting.
there's another key point
Yeah.
that you brought up that I wanted to answer. There is an institution in England that I've been in touch with. Let's see if I can remember the name, it's been a while, whose job it is to help scientists write reusable software. Writing a script for yourself is different than making a stable piece of software that can be shared and maintained and developed for other people. So they may have a good idea and have a good design, but they're going to need help putting it all together. They need a kind of producer in a sense, like you need a producer. So for the people who don't want to do it at all, we need to get them involved in design. For the people who are already involved in developing software, we're trying to teach them the basic principles of sustainability and replicability in software to help take their interesting work already and make it more available. So those are the two related but different challenges.
Well, let's take the average case. Okay, I'm mapping the ocean floor using some sort of sonar Doppler effect.
Right.
And I have to figure out exactly, how to interpret the signal that comes back. So it's acoustic.
Yes.
And I take the sound waves and I put them into, charts and graphs. Actually, I put them into data fields on a big spreadsheet kind of database, and then I interpret them. And I'm mapping the ocean floor, for example, and all I need is to create my chart and graph because that's my deliverable. I really don't care about the guy who's, doing something, say, with geology on land. Don't care. And yet, of course, I will agree with you that there's a value for him to use what I develop. And what I develop is more valuable if it goes to other platforms. But for me, I don't care. I want to get right into it. I want to figure it out, read all the books. I want to talk to people like you. I'll call you up, yeah. And I want to, do my map. And for me, that's very efficient. If I have to wait on some enterprise level software engineer to do this, it's going to take me a long time. And I have to go get permission to spend the money. I have to find the money, I have to get a grant for the money, I have to justify the larger platform. So, just getting to drilling down, if you will, it's a pun here.
Yeah.
All I want to do is make my map. And if I know enough to do that, that's the simplest approach, isn't it?
Well, everything you said is true, in my opinion.
Everything I ever say is true. I have staff here that will absolutely agree. Can I have a little statement of agreement here? Okay, there they go, yeah. See, I told you, Avrum.
Yep. So the problem is that we want to enable the scientist to do his research on what's important to him or her, of course, and not get in his way. But he swims in an ocean of research, a research community, which includes everything from his colleagues, from the universities, from the professional associations, from the publishers, and from the government and other funding agencies. That all is, shall we say, an ecology, a research ecology. And you have to fit into that. So what he really needs for someone to help him make sure his software is robust and supportable and that the equipment is working, but also allows his software to hook into the rest of the ecology. So that, for example, um, if his software is using university equipment, which he is paying for out of his budget,
Actually, can I stop you there and say, well, a lot of these guys design their own equipment.
yes,
They don't buy it for the same reasons, for the same analysis. You need a black box to do this and that. Build it.
that's true. But also, especially more so in biomedical research, you're also using shared facilities like they have at the cancer center here in, what is it, Kaka'ako?
Mm-hmm.
And as well as the Marine Biology Center up on that island, I forget the name of it, off of,
Coconut.
yeah,
Island.
that's it. They all have large equipment that's in facilities shared by the research scientists, because even if you want to build your own equipment, you also want to use some of these shared things like microscopes or DNA analysis kinds of facilities, and you also want that expertise. Let's say you need DNA analysis. Well, you may not know how to analyze the data that you get back from the analysis. You may need some assistance with it. So research is not done by itself in a vacuum. It's part of that ecology, and your software needs to hook into that ecology no matter what. At a minimum, you want to be able to include in your article that you publish scientific information showing your results, which may be in graphs, it may be in charts, it may be in maps. You want to include that in your article. So at a minimum, you're going to have to import your data into your article and get it out to the publishers. And then, of course, if you're applying for a grant, you have to get it to the granting. That sounds simple, and in theory it should be, but moving all this data and showing it in different ways is part of the issues that need to be addressed sometimes.
Now, let me turn the table on you. Seems to me that if I'm publishing and I'm providing data or interpretation of data, an article, a graph, a chart, whatever it may be, a conclusion, a scientific conclusion, on the basis of my own software that I wrote, that has a certain level of credibility, especially if I've been writing it for a while.
Right.
But if I go to a guy, for example, like Avrum Goodblatt, and I say, Avrum, you've been writing this software for a long time, you've published in this software, it's being used by all these multinationals, what have you, I would think that not only the granting agency, but the scientific community would say, good, that gives credibility to the conclusions. Because if the software interposes itself between the data and the result, and the software is flawed, hypothetically flawed, then the result is flawed. And
Yes.
the credibility of the ultimate conclusion is flawed.
So then if you're going to have your science replicated, remember, in science, people have to replicate your results. Otherwise, they're not going to be accepted. To replicate the results, they're going to need access possibly to your software. Well, if your software has not been built so that it can easily be shared with someone else and operated by someone else, then they can't.
Replicate.
That's
And
right.
If they can't replicate, this credibility problem.
That's right. So the point is, you can't unless you're a billionaire who subsidizes your own research and doesn't care what anybody else thinks about you and about your research. You're Captain Nemo going on the bottom of the ocean and it doesn't matter what the rest of the world's doing. Fine, but that's not the case. So that means you mean to interconnect it.
Everybody, they all collaborate now. I mean, you pointed out, and I would not disagree with it, that the scientific world is completely collaborative now.
Yes.
You cannot reach the kind of conclusions that you need to think
That's
through by yourself, usually, without talking to your peers, your colleagues everywhere.
Now, all the different issues that I brought up are addressed in different ways by different pieces of software out there. This is not that I've come up with new ideas of what software is needed. The approach that I've taken that is not so much unique, but that I was specializing in, was saying supporting your scientists requires both understanding what is available and really understanding what they're doing. Most software engineers that are working as software engineers but not as scientists don't necessarily understand what the scientist is doing.
So how do you find out?
Well, my contention is it's easier to take a PhD in biology or neuroscience and teach them the added skills necessary to act as this kind of connecting person in keeping the systems connected and going and developed than it is to take a software engineer and teach him
biology.
That's right, because think about it. You know, a PhD must be pretty smart in science to get where he is, at least in his field. Software engineering comes in all shapes and sizes and capabilities. Also, many of the younger scientists take to this quickly. They grew up with computers. They just need perhaps more formalized training in certain areas of development and support. I would say that if you take a PhD, a young PhD, maybe a postdoc, who has an interest and capability innate to communicate and collaborate, and not all scientists do. Many scientists are doing that because they like to sit in front of their computer at their desk and work focused on their work, okay? In other words, there is the model of the scientist which approaches that fellow on the Big Bang Theory.
So you're saying that,
You
say
know the
my
vocab-
biologist here,
Yeah,
my biologist could go and study computer science and learn about all these languages and possibilities.
that's not even the important part.
What's the important part?
Design, understanding the principles of good design.
And I bet there's a lot of people who do computer coding who don't understand design. So you have a program that really doesn't do the job. It may be limited in that
Yes,
way.
and not only do you need to understand design, you need to understand what the science in the field is about, which you can gain from years of experience with it, but if you've been working in a lab already and you've studied all your life for it, you already know that. As you said, to pick up the languages is not trivial, but it's relatively straightforward. So I'd rather take a group of postdocs or graduate students who are interested and motivated to learn this kind of thing and add on this capability and turn them into what I remember I used the term back then, catalyzers.
I have a catalyzer for you right now. We're going to do a catalytic break. We're going to break for 1 minute, get catalyzed, and come back.
Excellent.
Ladies and gentlemen, you saw it here on ThinkTech, a catalytic break.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to ThinkTech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching ThinkTech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m. That was weird.
Okay, we're back. We've had our catalytic agent, and now we're going to, dive further into this.
Can I
So
bring-
let me be the provocateur.
Please.
Okay. So I'm a biologist. I want to know design. So I go and study, and now I'm still a biologist. I haven't changed my spots. Now I know design and I know coding, and I'm laying that on top. But why don't we just take a biologist and make him a computer programmer? And he stays in the same place. He's just a biologist and also a computer. It's the same thing as the guy who's mapping the ocean floor, takes it upon himself to learn how to code, and he codes. I mean, the tension to me, like years ago, if you wanted computer coding, you went to the computer science department and they would help you if you were at the university. Okay, and then over time, don't you think, Avrum? Over time, everybody began to do it himself because it wasn't required that you go there. You could learn it yourself. It was may I say, some of it was not rocket science, may I say that? And so people would find a way, because people are, you know, if you're a PhD or a postdoc and, or a researcher, you know, you're an independent thinker. You want to solve all the problems yourself. You don't want to necessarily rely on
So
another department for that.
It's, first of all, it's two things. First of all, there's a continuum here. Like I said, whatever you're doing has an important aspect of collaboration on it. When you're collaborating with something, a certain amount of time has to be spent learning about other things that are not germane to your specific task, but to fit you into the larger ecology. In a sense, this person we're talking about, the catalyzer, is the person who takes it upon themselves and likes doing it.
Well, is he leaving biology?
No, he's not leaving biology, but he's in a sense the person on the team, the research team, whose job it is to understand how to connect their stuff up to other places and how to make sure it gets where it's supposed to get going.
Okay, so you have a biologist without computer science, and you have a biologist with computer science.
Yes.
And he's the catalyzer for the guy without computer
And not just
science.
for him, he can be a catalyzer for several research teams, not just for one. The situation depends on the nature. You have research labs which are very large, could have 30, 40 people in them, have research labs which have 2 or 3 people in them. So, you know, there's different ways to deal with it and different ways to have this work out, but the key factor is that as many scientists who want to get involved, work with design can do it, but even once they've designed it, they may not want to take the time to learn a language, to implement it. They say, you know, this is what I want, here's the input, here's the output, do this for me, can you please do this for me?
So I guess your point is that in every academic research situation, every research situation, you want to have a guy in the room, right there available to you, I guess, who can help you with this. You may know some stuff about computers, but you need the designer, you need the, you know, the sophisticated coder who can put it together on a platform that will be, you know, robust.
And also
useful.
understands the software ecology. What software should you write it in? How can you connect from
All of
your
that.
system to another system where you need to share data? This requires a lot of knowledge that, you know, even if a simple thing, you want to import it into a spreadsheet. Sometimes that can be trivial, sometimes that can be a little complicated. You don't want to have to reinvent the wheel by learning all that stuff on your own.
Right, but do you want somebody like this in the team? Or is it like, you know, hey, Mo, can you help me with this problem? You know, and he's across the room.
Like I said,
or
it's
you
a
want to
continuum.
call Chicago about it.
It's a continuum. Some of the skills are useful to have on your team. You don't need to have all your skills on your team, but at least if you have one catalyzer on your team, even if he's also doing research, at least when you have a bigger problem, who's going to talk to that computer guy? If you, Mr. has no idea how design works or anything, you just do your science, you're not going to call that computer guy who knows all the arcane stuff up directly. You have your catalyzer contact.
And he's in the middle. He's
in the
between
middle.
you and the guy in Chicago.
That's right. So that the thing is, there are 2 important points here that I'd like to make. And in my opinion, they relate strongly to aspects of Hawaiian culture. And one of the reasons I'm here is I think in an interesting way, Hawaiian culture fosters the kind of thing I'm talking about. The first concept is one of respect. Hawaiians, and by Hawaiians, I don't only mean the Hawaiians who came here in the outriggers many generations ago, but I'm including everyone who lives in Hawaii today, that somehow all of the different ethnic groups and cultures have learned to work together here and talk with each other. That's one of the positive, proud things of Hawaii, that it takes different cultures who can learn to communicate, and that there's even a methodology by which we promote that. You know, the concept of talk story, where we can get together and talk our own story and share them and come up with a new story out of it. Well, that's really what you're talking about in this situation.
So you want to put that in a laboratory.
That's right. You got the talk story, you got the story of the scientist, you have the story of the software developer, for example, and there's other stories there too, and they need to share with each other, but still respect each other. I can tell you there are many
That
scientists.
doesn't happen in the ordinary world outside of Hawaii.
Well, all I can tell you is I worked a lot on the East Coast, and there's a good number of research scientists I met who perhaps thought a lot of themselves. To the extent that, and this is not just my comment. I've had researchers tell me, research PhD scientists tell me about what it was like, for example, dealing with certain MDs who wanted to do research. And here's what they told me, that basically the research scientists felt that the MDs would tell them an idea, and that the research scientist was supposed to understand the complete idea, including all the pieces he didn't tell him, in order to give him the research assistance that he needed. So somebody comes up with an idea. Does he want to take the time? No, he wants you to do a Vulcan mind meld. He doesn't want to take the time to explain what his idea is about and test it out and work it out. He doesn't want to take the time. You have to take the time. So the question is, who can take this time? Well, the catalyzer is much better at understanding what this big Mr. Head of the lab and won't give you any time.
By definition, he's there, he knows.
He understands what the research is about.
Yeah.
And this head scientist will also give him more respect than he will some computer programmer, because at least he's a researcher who's doing research and has put the time in. Then this guy needs to then talk to the computer programmers. Now again, there's a lot of computer programmers who feel that they can program anything and that disciplines don't matter. So this programmer sometimes, in his arrogance, might not even respect the scientist either. So you have two disrespecting situations going on. Nobody listens to each other, and they end up with large amounts of software which is not doing what it's supposed to do. And if you say, how is it possible, if you throw enough money at it, to not get the computer system you need? Well, explain that to our president when he brought out the software for the Affordable Care Act. Do you remember what it was like?
That's a really good example of what you're talking about.
How is it possible that it wasn't working with millions of dollars thrown at it? In my opinion, it's usually because people didn't listen to each other.
They got to talk to each other,
Yeah,
listen.
and if one thing in Hawaii we know, and I say we, I lived here before, I'm living here again, my family is here, we have learned that it's necessary for survival to talk to each other and listen. And that
So
needs
how do we, so let's assume that. Let's assume that we have certain listening skills. Let's assume that we have a whole university of people who are trying to do science.
Yeah.
Let's assume that they would do better if there was a catalyst person among them,
Yeah.
or close to them.
Right.
How do you implement this plan? Accepting all of these points, how do you implement a plan like that so that we achieve the best result?
On the university level, what's critical is that there's a career path for such people.
There isn't now?
I have not yet seen a place where there's a career path for this kind of person.
They have a computer science department that is well
Sure.
respected.
But when you're a research scientist, do you get career credit in going up the ladder for the work you did in catalyzing the design and
I
development
mean, like
of the software?
tenure and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, you don't. Each group has its own track of how it deals with things, and until they include this kind of discipline in their, not necessarily tenure, it doesn't have to be a professor, but in your track as you advance in your career, it's not going to happen, because in the end you go where you're being paid to go.
So what would you advise David Lassner to do to execute the plan based on these assumptions we've been discussing?
I would see if I could identify a group within the university, and by within the university, I'm extending that to also include groups that are related to the university but perhaps separate, such as the UH Cancer Center, which is not, I believe it's not totally under the university, it's its own entity, but I'm not sure of the structural situation. But find a group that says, this is a good idea, we'd like to try it out, and give them the resources to do it. For example, fund 1 catalyzer, 2 catalyzer positions, or partially fund in addition to their research.
Well, what does it look like in credentials? I mean, so I'm a biologist, I have a PhD in biology, I'm knowledgeable, I've been writing, but I have projects that could use, some sophisticated enterprise level research software. So how do you establish this person within my group? And groups, I agree with you, groups are sometimes hard to define. What is a group? Sometimes it's an informal group of researchers who may not actually, be together. So do I give them another kind of degree? Do I say, well, this is a double PhD and there's a second one involved and it's a, PhD on design and coding of software?
Eventually, that might be a useful thing to do, but that takes a lot more time and work and is over several years. If you want more immediate results, what you need to do is identify some PhD grad students or postdocs who already are interested in spending time on something like this, but also have good science skills, that they're known to know.
And you put them through training.
You put them through a
You
training.
make them a PhD in computer science.
No, you don't need to make them a PhD in computer science, but you need to augment their work with trainings specific to the kind of computer design that's most important to the work they're doing. Because people don't have a lot of time. And if you find someone that valuable, you don't want to shunt them out of the research. You want to keep them going in research. It would take a lot of thought and work, but I would say the best way to do it is to have practicums or seminars for several of these catalyzers around the university to get together and sharing their insights and learning based on a curriculum that would be designed on the scientist's needs, how to augment their skills in design and communication. And for example, there are seminars and programs developed by the institution in England. I think it's called the Software Sustainability Institute. And other places doing similar kinds of things to begin to get them to think about what they're doing as a discipline. Because part of the thing is just identifying that this is something to do.
What about from the other side? In other words, they look at it as a case study. You're a biologist. I come to you. I say, Avrum, let me see what you're doing here, and what are your frustrations? What are your mission? What's your goal? And what are you trying to conclude? And you tell me.
And who is the you?
Me, I'm that postdoc guy.
Okay,
who has
I
some
already understand.
skills. Okay.
He can talk about arcane
But
terminology.
I'm looking at it as a case
Yeah.
study. I'm not going general, I'm going specific. And he and I work on this together, and I give him what I have, and he gives me what he has, and we collaborate. We actually collaborate with the result that he doesn't have to work that hard on the computer science part, and I can make a contribution to his work. I don't know if this is practical, in the sociological way the research is conducted. I know it's complicated, the way people, react to each other and work together or not. But it just strikes me that if you had this fellow or girl who was into that and addressed it on a case study basis, I'm not bringing you, a whole, ream of books about this. I'm merely working with you.
Yes.
And you're going to ask me questions about your project, and I will answer your questions.
So what is the question?
Which way to go? I mean, you start from the general, or you start from the specific project?
I think it's better to start from the specific project. They have to look at real-world situations, not something that somebody just imagined in his head.
Yeah.
Because when you're working with a real-world situation, its necessities will help guide you toward a proper design.
And they guide us too. Necessities guide us, for example, in taking breaks during the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes we feel that it's an absolute necessity and we are compelled,
Exactly.
impelled, totally required.
Yep.
Which is what we're going to do now.
Aloha, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I host Sustainable Hawaii every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. My guests offer insights on challenging economic and environmental issues facing our state and offer innovative solutions to increasing Hawaii's long-term sustainability. Recently, we've been focusing on sustainable land development, food, and energy security. If you have a project or issue you'd like to discuss on the show or would like to be a guest, please contact me at kirstenbturner@gmail.com and tune in live weekly or view the show at your convenience at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, asking you to come join us on ThinkTech Hawaii Hibachi Talk. Join me and my two hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Ender the Security Guy, every Friday from 12:45 till 13:45. See you on Fridays, and remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Avrum Goodblatt. He's an enterprise level computer programmer person, and lives on Maui, comes to Honolulu once in a while, mostly for Chinese food. And he's originally from Philadelphia, where he did this kind of medical computer software programming for global ventures in research.
Although I have to admit, Jay, I don't want to hide my background. I'm not embarrassed by it. If you go back far enough, I was a valley boy.
A valley boy?
Yes.
You mean
San Fernando Valley. San Fernando Valley. Yes.
I knew there was something about your accent.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. So I mean, this is all interesting, and it's kind of theoretical. And the question is, assuming there is this gap, assuming it, because I know a lot of scientists who are perfectly happy programming. They do whatever they need. They never complain about it. They always get the job done. They
Yes.
write fabulous articles.
You know these people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just, handle it. They handle it. It's part of, and they also build devices, and it gets done.
Okay, I accept that
So,
those people might
nobody
exist.
nobody is out there saying, "Oh, I'm stuck now. I don't have the software." So, I mean, I think maybe the first part of the problem is to see, what's missing.
There's
and
enough
people admit what's missing.
There's enough people who admit it that we don't need to worry about the people who don't admit it.
Okay.
There's enough out there.
But how do you make this work in your world? I mean, in your, what do you call it, computer ecology ecosystem, how do you make this work? So, let's assume that you could get, in fact, I'm going to make you the president of the University of Hawaii for a day. In fact, I'm going to make you the Board of Regents too. You're both.
Does this
This
include
is
Chinese
enormous.
food?
This would be a really good day.
It includes Chinese food, I
Any
assume.
amount, any
Okay, then
quality,
I'll do it.
any kind you want. Okay. So what do you do to change this and make it work really swell, and and thus, according to this analysis, and thus build a better research engine, if you will, at UH? What do you do?
Every institution, by its very nature, has politics of its own. And ignoring politics is a mistake. Large companies with large research, forget even universities, large companies with large research arms have politics. I won't go into details because we don't really have the time, but there's a well-known story of when the old Lotus 123 hired business managers because they were getting too big for themselves and growing too fast. After they hired and got a human resources department, they noticed that the quality of their staff was going down. So they took all the resumes of the initial 30 or so people, stripped off their names, put them into human resources to apply for jobs, and nobody was accepted. Because HR was looking for standardization, and if you have a bunch of creative types, which is exactly what you're supposed to have at a university as well, so the problem is even worse there, there is a natural tension, a creative tension, so to speak, between management for control and management for creativity. Those both need to exist. The key thing that needs to be done is acknowledging the tension, creative tension, a positive tension, between those two kinds of management, and making sure both have a place within your institution and that you can communicate between the two. What they did with Lotus 123 to solve their problem is they took the entire creative team and moved them away from the main campus, because they realized once they were on the main campus, they would be stifled. You can't do that.
By the politics of the campus.
Yes. You can't do that in a university because everybody's supposed to, large number of people are supposed to be creative. There's been a backlash recently within the university environments. Over the years, they've been brought in more and more HR departments and regular management, and they've discovered that in certain cases, the HR has kind of taken over management of the university in a strange way. And that now the universities are, and this is true with companies, and this is general comment, not just universities, the companies have said, you know what? We're a creative, constantly changing institution. We can't be governed by people who expect standardization all the time. We need to accommodate both kinds of things. And there's been a kind of retrenching and realizing standardization in all management is not the way to have a robust operation. That is the key piece. In my opinion, if the head of the university acknowledges that as a factor, an inevitable factor, an unavoidable factor, that there's going to be these two arms of his institution, and they will not agree on how to do things, but they are both needed, then one will not be sacrificed to the other. What happens for...
What do you do? You stand up at a speech and say one will not be sacrificed to the other? That we all have to recognize the two arms? We have to play well in the sandbox? What do you do?
Well, first of all, even that would be useful, because the atmosphere that's set within the institution helps dictate what is happening. But you have to, so to speak, put your money where your mouth is. You have to give the necessary autonomy and the necessary funding, whatever that is, to help seed this and make it happen. I've seen this go retrograde in biomedical research institutions. I just want to leave you with this unfortunate knowledge. As biomedical research institutions have grown, and of course, over the last few years, there's been a major cutback in biomedical research funding from the government. And also, many of these biomedical research institutions have research hospitals attached to them. And as the computer situation becomes more and more sophisticated and challenging, they appoint a chief information officer or chief technology officer for the hospital, and I've seen in several cases...
Does this help?
It helps for the hospital, but I've seen in several cases where that person is then given oversight of the research technology as well.
Doesn't help.
Now, when you're making a decision on when you spend your money, are you going to spend your money on technology to make sure somebody doesn't die in the operating room, or to help a researcher?
So
researcher is given short
chief
shrift.
information officer, chief technology officer, okay, is different than the chief research technology officer.
Correct.
And we have to close, but I want to tell you a story, and it lends an idea about what I would do if I gave myself this extraordinary power that you've had for the last 10 minutes, and squandered because you didn't give me an answer. Sorry. Here's what I would do. It's all about food. Food, okay? There's a fellow named Robert Olson developed the new Fitzsimmons. You know the new Fitzsimmons in Denver. Huge, big pharma research facility.
Yeah.
It was in the shell of a hospital just like Tripler here.
Right, yeah.
Okay, and he wanted to bring them from all over the world. He wanted to foment and, you know, and make their juices flow.
Yes.
So what did he do? Every morning, he brought them together in this big cafeteria affair, and he gave them breakfast, and he let them make speeches to each other. And it was all kind of off the record, so nobody was violating intellectual property.
Okay.
Nothing, you'll have to agree, nothing a researcher likes to do more than talk about his research, come out of his shell.
Yes.
And so there were all these collaborations, including collaborations between biologist and biologist, biologist and physicist, biologist and computer science guy. And they did some amazing things, and they brought in all these big pharma companies, and it made this place great. And it was all about scrambled eggs, maybe some muffins.
And today, what is their situation?
Oh, it's a great organization today. Big pharma at New Fitzsimmons.
Okay.
And I think that somehow it's one of those elegant solutions. It's a surprise solution. You wouldn't think of it, but there it is. We have to talk about this further, Avrum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And I will make you, next time, I'm going to make you governor. See what happens then. Don't stand up. We're not done.
Whoop.